Joining us now on the program for our weekly mental health discussion is Carrie Krawiec, a therapist at the Birmingham Maple Clinic. Carrie, thanks for being with us today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you on with us as you are an expert in sort of relationship therapy and group therapy as well. And we're in a time of the year where we're just beyond the Valentine's Day holiday and some of these very grandiose and big gestures of love that happen then, and then things start to fizzle back to normal, and sometimes that can bring up a number of different issues in communication in these relationships, and that often has a major effect. And that can also affect them, particularly when they're communicating over our devices. Nowadays, we are doing a lot of communicating with people all across our life, whether it's family or friends or work, on these devices, and there's certain things called sexting and phubbing that are big issues in relationships today, particularly sexting, which is a buzzword for fighting while you are texting. How does that change the dynamic when you're fighting over text with your significant other versus having those arguments in person and being able to really work those out in a one-to-one manner and in a timely manner?
Sure, their exact statistics aren't known, but it's probably pretty much anybody with a phone could say they've texted someone at some point. Even Jill Biden admitted that she and Joe, our president, may argue sometimes during text. So the great thing about texting, right, is that it's convenient. It's always available to us. If you have something to say, you can shoot it out. The problem is in our relationships, that's also true. So what happens when something even turns from pleasant conversation to a fight over text? You may say more than what you'd want to, too fast. You're saying it quickly without thinking or planning what you might say. You're not reading the feedback of the other person to know how it's being received. And you don't always know if it's necessarily reciprocal. You say something, then they say something in return. There may be cases where you're available, so you're putting everything on your mind out there, and they're going to get bombarded in an hour, 3 or 4 hours, or after their workday with everything that you said. They may miss some of it. They may misunderstand some of it. Also with sarcasm isn't clear via texting. Emojis aren't clear. They have different meanings to different people. And you also can't do the other things that help make a fight worth, growing your relationship: physical touch, kind words, humor, things that can kind of soften a fight. Those also don't read through text.
So let's take a step back in this, because fighting over text has its benefits. It's quick. It's right there. It's convenient. You can do it any time. You can hash out these arguments, even if you're across the city, across the world, with your significant other. But ultimately, you're still having a fight. You're still having an argument. So taking that back to the very basic level, in a relationship, whether it is with a significant other or it's with family, friends, coworkers, what makes for a healthy fight or a healthy argument?
Sure, I think both people being ready, having calm physical, body, of course, a fight is going to stir some things up. But if your voice is raising, if you're getting more physically tense, there's going to be a start to break down. Of course, if you're getting louder, or more, even using more swear words or more harsher language, more harsher body language, all of those things are going to cause a fight to break down. And so the other thing about texting, like we said, is that, one person may say, like, I don't want to do this right now. And in person, that person may leave or go to another room or something else. But on text, one may say, I don't want to do this right now. And if the other keeps rapid firing, the person who said they didn't want to do this is going to be basically assaulted, like someone ringing their doorbell constantly, even though they're pretending to not be home. So you're really causing the other person to escalate emotionally.
And then on top of that, even if you're having a healthy argument and you're having that healthy argument over text, at some point, people are going to get occupied. They may walk away from their phone. They may just simply not answer because they just don't want to do that at that time. And that can affect the other person involved too and escalate things on top of that. And so you're not having that necessarily when you have an in-person conversation, because you can read those body language cues, and when someone walks away from it, you can physically see they're not into this right now. They don't want to be getting into this right now. And of course, you have the ability to cool things down by separating and clearly saying that things are getting too tense. That's something you don't really get over text.
Right. And like you said, I mean, we have not, although we've been texting for many years now, we haven't figured out many of the relational rules or kind of the social norms when it comes to it, And so some people will say, well, I've seen you read it. So, and I know you can respond quickly. So therefore you must. But there are times when it would be okay to be thoughtful or deliberate about an answer, or when you can't, in fact, respond, even though someone thinks perhaps you can, if you're driving or if you're in a meeting or some otherwise occupied. And so, and like you're right, we can often jump to conclusions. I mean, I think even just having the etiquette of like, look, I'm about to get in my car right now, so I'm not going to be able to respond to this for the next 15 or 25 minutes. We often don't do that. We just keep it going a steady stream. It's really not helpful to us. So, creating some rules, or having some, just even some common etiquette, I'm not going to get to this right now. So expect me to return in a couple of hours. Because like you said too, for the person who's waiting to be responded to, they can escalate in that time, especially if they feel like they're being unjustly ignored, even if it is for a real reason.
We're joined by Carrie Krawiec on today's edition of the Megacast, a therapist at the Birmingham Maple Clinic, talking about arguments and other forms of distress in the communication of a relationship, especially over technology, particularly over text messaging and on our phones. And we think about these sort of situations, these sort of scenarios, and it really has a parallel. In some cases, it's a mirror image too of what we see on social media, where people get in front of a keyboard or they get in front of their phone and behind the wall of a text message, and they have this sort of courage that is really in many cases just cowardice to say whatever's on their mind completely unfiltered. So just at the most basic level, Carrie, what is it about being behind a keyboard, not being in person with someone, that gives people this sort of sudden confidence that I can say whatever I feel like saying, even if it's completely unfiltered and it's probably the wrong thing to say, even though I know on the other side there is more than likely a very real person there that's going to be really hurt by this?
Sure. I think, right, there's probably a lot of factors. When a real person is in front of you, we may be flooded with some other body cues. Our voice may crack. We may feel anxious. We may start to cry, something like that. That doesn't tend to happen when that person isn't there. We also might be informed by some other things. We might have people cheering us on to say, yeah, say that, and then we're getting actually amped up, where like you said, there's no real breaks to say, I don't know, is this going to be a good idea? So we don't have those other emotional cues. Our emotions are really a connection between our body and our mind and our environment. And so that veil of the screen makes it feel like our environment is sort of one dimensional, and so we don't really feel like the other people are actual people. But when they're with us, they're people that we love, they're people that we care about what they think of us, and those feelings then change.
More information and get in contact with Carrie and the other professionals at the Birmingham Maple Clinic. You can find them on birminghammaple.com. Birminghammaple.com, where Carrie is, among other things, a marriage and family therapist at the Birmingham Maple Clinic. And that really provide some great insight from you here, because these are things that really do happen in real relationships. And so for you as an expert in the mental health field, that is communicating with these couples and working through maybe some of these issues with real people and real couples, where do you start with this? If people are having issues with, they're arguing, and these arguments have gone from being mostly in person to being over text, whether it is a couple that is still an active couple, or I think about a family therapy situation. Now, you think particularly about co-parents that may be divorced or may have not continued a relationship after they were pregnant, and have those arguments that come along with being a co-parent. Where do you
Mhm.
begin with this, especially if these arguments have started to escalate, particularly over technology?
Sure. I mean, I think first and foremost, it's about boundaries and setting up some common ideas about what times are available, how long in a stream. That's the other thing about texting, is that an argument could start at some point in the morning and just sort of never finish, just keep going at different points throughout the day. And get recharged at different points about the day. So having some rules, like we're going to talk about this topic for this much time, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, something brief will help to confine it, will help to keep it contained. Otherwise it's just like spilling out all over into everything. I mean, I think there's something we hadn't mentioned before. It's not just what you're not just what you're saying, the actual words, but also what you mean, why you're saying them, how you're saying them. Communication is multiple different levels. So you may be saying something very honest and truthful, but even a short one word answer conveys something, right? It might convey disinterest, it might convey manipulation, it might convey evasiveness. So you're communicating more than one thing at a time, and you get the most of that when you're doing it in person. You're always going to miss some layer of it and leave it up for interpretation if you're doing it via text message.
So obviously, from what we discussed, it's pretty obvious that having these arguments in person with someone else, especially a significant other, a co-parent, or someone that you have that close relationship in some way or another with, it's best to have that hashed out in person, one-to-one, so you can read all those cues and you can have a really thorough argument and understand where that other person is coming from. But given the convenience of text messaging and other technological communications, how do you set that good base? Because I feel like this is a really good opportunity for people that are in an argument or have something they need to hash out but aren't able to really get together one-to-one for a while, even if it's across that day or across that week or month, to really set that base. And when they do have that time to have that one-to-one discussion in person, they have that baseline of where each person's coming from, and maybe will be able to perhaps approach the argument from a better spot.
Sure. So, in person, even in person, we can be faster than we intend to, and we can miss things. And so, one of the remedies recommended for in couples counseling is often what's called speaker listener. So, one person talks and the other person repeats back what they heard, asks clarifying questions, make sure they understand it, and then it's their turn. So, it's a much slower kind of back and forth. And I think that could probably really apply to texting. This is what you wrote. This is what I read. This is how I'm taking it, and this is my response given how I'm taking it. If there's something else that needs to be corrected or clarified, this is the opportunity to do that now before then the first person speaks again.
BirminghamMaple.com is their website to get in contact with Carrie and the other professionals at the Birmingham Maple Clinic. She joins us today for our weekly mental health segment on the Megacast. You can join us every Thursday morning for this segment on the Megacast, and always stay up to date with us on civiccentertv.com/Megacast. Carrie, another buzzword that creates a whole different issue in relationships over technology. It's not too much attention, it's the lack of attention, and that is phubbing. Tell us about phubbing.
So phubbing is snubbing your partner in place of your phone. So another thing we're all guilty of, perhaps. Our phones are designed to be attractive to us, right? They beep, they buzz, they shake our watches. They give us a lot of opportunities to distract ourselves from what we're doing, and that's done by design. So sometimes phubbing to our partner may feel like we're choosing another person over them, but sometimes we're choosing truly the inanimate object and just lights and sparkles and whatever else it's giving us over our partners. Like I said before, we communicate what our words and what we're saying and we're doing. But we say you matter to me. But if a person's talking and we keep looking to our phone, looking to our phone, looking to our phone, we're actually conveying something else. We're actually conveying this matters more. And so to just be aware of that, to take measures, to put your phone on silent, dark. If you want to spend one-on-one time with your significant other, your child, your parent, your loved one, and you can't do it without the nuisance of being distracted, take measures to make that more private, and or create those expectations ahead of time. Look, I want to be here with you, but I'm expecting a certain call, text, email, alert, whatever, fill in the blank, mail coming to my house. I need to just pay attention, so like allow the person to know that, and maybe also get some permission. Is it okay if I check it periodically? Or I'll let you know, excuse me, I want to hear the rest of what you're saying, but I do need to address this. So just adding the etiquette instead of just it being so automatic.
And that quality time is so important in these relationships too. But as you mentioned, life gets in the way, other things get in the way, we get distracted. These things are meant to distract us as much as they possibly can, and that can create a rift where you may be seeming like you're ignoring your significant other, you're not important to them. And there are some metrics on this that you actually have, Carrie, unlike what we had with texting. This is something that's
Yeah.
pretty common.
Yeah, sure. I mean, many Americans report doing it and feeling it done to them. And I mean, I think that's the other thing too, is that it's not always like, here, time out, let's both check our phones, right? It's usually one maybe doing it in one scenario and the other is doing it in the other. Same with our, kids or other family members. We all have times when we want or need our own attention. So that's the other piece, is asking and advocating for it. Like, hey, I know you have a busy day or you're expecting X, Y, and Z calls, but right now I have something that needs, undivided attention, or else I'm going to feel really hurt. So going into a situation, setting the stage for what you want, as the person who's maybe perhaps wanting to not have the phone be an issue. And then the person who perhaps needs the phone for whatever reason at the time, also communicating what they need for that time and trying to create a shared sort of expectation for what's going to work for both.
More information and to get in contact with Carrie and the other professionals at the Birmingham Maple Clinic can be found on birminghammaple.com. Birminghammaple.com, or call them 248-646-6659. 248-646-6659, or info@birminghammaple.com via email for more information and get your questions and consultations met by the Birmingham Maple Clinic. All of this really comes back to establishing and maintaining strong communication with your partners or with significant others, with your family, whoever you may be communicating with, especially over technology, because so often today we are making these communications via technology with our significant others and with other people, sometimes simultaneously, and whether it be ghosting or it be phubbing or it be texting, there's so many different ways that we are using technology and having adverse effects in our relationship. So as we bring it all back and we as individuals are observing our own behavior and evaluating our own behavior, what should we really be looking out for and focusing on as we are relating not just to technology but to other people simultaneously?
Sure, I think especially in our more intimate relationships, the people that are very closest to us, what makes a family strong or a relationship strong, one of the things is shared expectations or shared rules. I have what I like, my preferences, you have yours, but do we also have shared, sort of a Venn diagram? Where do we align in the middle? And just kind of making sure for certain types of conversations, certain types of texting, or whatever it is, whether it's watching TV together, whatever, do we talk during it, do we not talk during it, right? Is kind of having a share, where do we align, and making sure we stay within those boundaries, or at least align our expectations to those boundaries when we're having these conversations.
Again, more information and to get in contact with Carrie and the other professionals at the Birmingham Maple Clinic, especially if you're having these kinds of issues with your partner and these things are maybe better addressed with a neutral third party involved. BirminghamMaple.com is their website, 248-646-6659. We're joined by Carrie Krawiec, a therapist at the Birmingham Maple Clinic, with us, as always, on Thursdays for a weekly mental health segment. And Carrie, a few more minutes with you before we'll wrap things up today. Anything else on texting or on phubbing or on other technology-related issues in relationships that we haven't discussed that would be important for individuals and certainly for these couples to consider at this time?
I think one neat idea is perhaps considering a device cleanse, and separating yourself, but trying to do it at least certain hours of the day or for a certain period of days, to just kind of reset the power it has over you and to help slow you down, be more mindful and aware of what are you saying, what are you doing, what do you really need to say or do. Sometimes, especially with texting, sometimes we may say something untrue too fast, or we may say something true that could be left unsaid too fast. And to just kind of be able to modify our reactions and take a little more time. And sometimes sort of a cleanse or a reset might be something that to consider, to be able to do that.
Yeah, sometimes it's better to say things a little bit too late than to say bad things a little bit too early. Carrie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.